Julian here, and welcome to another episode of Ultra TV. If you don't know where I am, you can find me everywhere at the Ultrapreneur on the web. Now, I wanted to talk about a question which I was asked at an event that I spoke at last week. Spoke at an investment banking gig, and after my talk, someone asked me a question and asked, "What makes a good business idea?" And my answer was, you know, if you've got a good business idea, if someone pays for it. And I think it's as simple as that. However, I realized in answering the question a couple of days later, I realized that, you know, there are different levels to having a good idea. And what I want you to do after this video is to think about the idea that you've got or the idea that you're currently running with and see which one applies. Now, the first level of good is a good idea that can only generate enough revenue to look after one person, right? And generally we kind of call that a micro business. And there are lots of reasons why that will happen. You could have a product or service that has a really small margin, and you've only got 40 hours in the week, and you can only really sell or generate enough revenue to cater for one person, okay? Then you have an idea that's good enough to look after a family, or a few individuals that are working together. And that kind of idea will generate enough income to match a full-time salary, something that is a full-time income that can, cover the rent or the mortgage, put food on the table, and, send you on a holiday once a year. And those types of businesses are generally ones which either have a higher ticket value, or you have found a way to move enough volume of whatever product or service that you're selling for it to generate that size of revenue. Then the next kind of business is a business which is good enough to scale, a business which is good enough to grow. And you'll probably hear investors talking about, when they're interrogating someone's idea, can it scale? Is it going to grow? And that's because those are the kinds of businesses that have, growth and revenue potential for an investor to see a return back on whatever it is that they put in. And those kinds of businesses are businesses, and it can be anything if I'm honest, but it's those kinds of businesses that have a market which is big enough, firstly, whether it's nationally or internationally, but also not just a big enough market, but where you have found a process or a mechanism to allow that business to run without you. And not just to run without you, but to scale without you. And I don't mean run or scale without you immediately, but at some point, that business doesn't really need you. And we could be talking about 3 to 5 years, whatever. But even in the short term, even if you're managing the business, you need to get to the point where you're not actually delivering on the promise of that business, and that you can get other people on board so that you can grow. Because growing a business, is a full-time job. You can't be at the coalface of the business and grow it at the same time. So you need to think about whether or not your business has that kind of potential, and whether or not it can grow into a market need which is big, which is huge, which is not just national, potentially international. So think about that, and think about where your business sits, because that directly relates to your aspirations and where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, whatever. And I think it's important that your business matches that, because you can have a business which will only ever be a micro business, but you've got millionaire aspirations, and it's just you probably will not meet those aspirations if you're running that kind of business. Or you might have a business which will always just be an SME business, and it can feed 4 or 5 people quite comfortably, but it's never going to go international. It's never going to be that big, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you've just got to understand that that's where your business is as a model. So that's it. Any questions, hit me in the comments. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about or address, then you know where I'm at. Julian at the Ultrapreneur. I'm out of here. Peace.